She wasn't just beautiful. She was engineered to be desired. Red swimsuit, bronze skin. That smile, equal parts innocence and seduction. In the 90s, Yasmine Bleeth wasn't a person. She was a brand, a fantasy, a poster taped on a million teenage bedroom walls. Millions watched her run on the beach every week on Baywatch. But no one noticed how fast she was running away from herself. Underneath the flawless surface was a woman unraveling, addicted, isolated, haunted by an image she could never live up to. They sold her body, frame by frame, but never her voice. She vanished almost overnight, and when she returned, they said, "What happened to her face?" Not, "Is she okay?" Because when a woman's body becomes the product, her pain becomes invisible. This is the untold story of Yasmine Bleeth. She entered the television screen like a slow-motion tidal wave, unstoppable, mesmerizing, surreal. With cascading chestnut hair and ocean blue eyes, Yasmine Bleeth didn't just play a lifeguard on Baywatch. She became the fantasy of an entire generation. Before she ever zipped up that iconic red swimsuit, she was already familiar to millions. As Caroline Holden on Baywatch, she wasn't the naive rookie nor the tough leader. She was the enigma in the middle. Strong but soft, sultry but sweet. She embodied contradictions that made her unforgettable. But it wasn't just Baywatch. She had already carved her place in soap opera history with Ryan's Hope, where she debuted at age 12, carrying the raw vulnerability of a girl who somehow seemed older than her years. Later, she would light up One Life to Live and Nash Bridges, proving she was more than just a swimsuit icon. She could act, emote, and command the screen. Still, no matter how many roles she took, the world kept dragging her back to the beach, to the slow runs, to the body, to the dream. In the mid-1990s, Yasmine was everywhere. Magazine covers declared her the sex symbol of the year. People magazine listed her among the 50 most beautiful people in the world. Men's Health readers called her one of the most desirable women alive. She graced covers in tight dresses, wet sand clinging to her skin, headlines like Yasmine Sizzles, splashed in bold. She didn't walk red carpets, she floated over them. Her presence turned heads, not because she demanded attention, but because attention followed her like a spotlight stuck in obsession. And for a while, it all seemed perfect. She dated actors, attended premieres, smiled wide for the cameras. Her interviews painted the portrait of a down-to-earth girl who just wanted love and a little peace. She laughed at fame, joked about her curves, and claimed to be more comfortable in sweatpants than heels. But under the surface, something trembled. Because while the world saw a goddess, she was just trying to stay afloat. The public never knew the pressure it took to stay Yasmine Bleeth. The diets, the workouts, the forced smiles, the knowledge that one wrong tabloid photo could mean the end of everything. She wasn't playing a role anymore. She was the role. A living poster. A walking expectation. A woman trapped in the fantasy that made her famous. And fame, especially that kind, comes with a price tag hidden in the fine print. As the world celebrated her beauty, it never paused to ask about her soul. No one noticed the fatigue behind the glamour. No one asked if she was okay. They just asked for more. And Yasmine, ever the professional, gave it, until she couldn't anymore. Until she, long before the magazine covers, long before the red suit fit her like armor, Yasmine Bleeth was just a girl in New York, born into the chaos and charisma of show business. Her mother, Karina, had once been a model. Her father, Philip Bleeth, a business owner with deep roots in media. Showbiz ran in her blood, and so did expectation. At just 10 months old, Yasmine appeared in a Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo commercial. She was too young to speak, too young to understand, but already, she was being watched. By the time she turned 6, she was posing for Max Factor, catching the eye of the iconic fashion photographer Francesco Scavullo. She didn't audition for fame. She was handed its first draft and told to make it work. But inside the perfectly posed child was a tension no camera could capture. She had a close relationship with her mother, Karina was her confidant, her compass, her mirror. When Karina spoke, Yasmine listened. When Karina smiled, Yasmine felt safe. And then, without warning, the smile vanished. In 1989, when Yasmine was just 20, Karina was diagnosed with inflammatory breast cancer. Aggressive, terminal. Within a year, she was gone. And so was Yasmine's center of gravity. The grief hollowed her. She would later describe that year as a blur of numbness and denial. The woman who guided her through every camera flash, every contract, every role, was no longer there to soften the noise. Yasmine didn't fall apart right away. She buried herself in work. She said yes to every opportunity. She ran faster, smiled wider, pushed harder. But the loss festered beneath the surface like a slow, silent storm. When she moved to Los Angeles, she was alone for the first time, truly alone. No mother, no mentor, just the industry and its promises. That's when the isolation began. Behind the makeup trailers and production lights, she began to feel something unravel inside her. A quiet anxiety, a sadness she couldn't explain. But there was no room for therapy on set, no script for vulnerability, only the expectation to show up, look perfect, and deliver lines. She began to internalize the image they created for her. If the world wanted sexy, she gave it. If they wanted smiles, she served them on cue. But after each role, she felt further from herself. And then came the silence. The moments after the camera stopped, where no one cared if she ate that day. No one checked if she had slept. Where the lights went out and the mirror stared back asking, "Who are you when no one's watching?" That question haunted her, because she didn't have an answer. In private, she began to turn to small escapes. Alcohol at first, harmless, social. Then something stronger. Something that promised calm and control, cocaine. She never intended to spiral. But grief, loneliness, and years of being objectified had taught her to seek relief in secret. The cocaine didn't judge her weight, didn't ask for autographs, didn't remind her she wasn't enough. It just made everything quieter. And for someone who had been under the spotlight since infancy, silence felt like peace. But addiction never offers peace. Only pause. And the price for that pause was coming. She didn't rise. She was sculpted. By agents. By casting directors. By producers who knew exactly what the male audience wanted. Yasmine Bleeth wasn't just hired for Baywatch. She was crafted for it. They told her how to run, how to arch her back just enough, how to smile like she was always seconds away from seduction. They didn't give her a character. They gave her a costume and a camera. At first, it felt like power. Millions watched. Millions desired. She was no longer just an actress. She was a phenomenon. But power built on fantasy is a cruel trick. It turns women into products. And products don't get to rest. So Yasmine adapted. She learned the angles. She memorized the scripts. She reshaped her body to fit into expectations tighter than her wardrobe. And when her roles grew thinner than her waistline, she found other ways to keep up. She didn't talk about it. She didn't need to. Hollywood has its own language, spoken in glances, contracts, and coded compliments. Can you lose 5 more pounds before Thursday? Let's go for something more daring. Smile bigger. Be more Baywatch. She smiled. She showed up. She became what they needed. But privately, she unraveled. Her dependency on cocaine, once an occasional reprieve, became routine. It was the thing that made early call times bearable. That numbed the whispers behind her back. That silenced the voice in her head asking, "Is this really you?" By the late 90s, the roles were changing. So was Yasmine. She tried new parts, more serious, more dramatic. She starred in Titans, hoping it would prove she was more than a swimsuit. But the press didn't care about her dialogue. They cared about her weight, her lips, her appearance in paparazzi photos. When she gained a few pounds, they called her bloated. When she disappeared from red carpets, they called her washed up. They forgot she was human. They only remembered the fantasy she once represented. Yasmine tried rehab. More than once. She made public statements about getting clean, about healing, about starting over. But every time she surfaced, the cameras zoomed in, not on her recovery, but on her body. Was she pretty enough to matter again? Was she thin enough to forgive? There was no reinvention without punishment. The system she fed for years had no loyalty, only appetite. And when she could no longer deliver, it turned its back. Quietly, coldly. Like she had never existed. She tried to reclaim pieces of herself, privately, away from the flashbulbs. But the woman who once belonged to the world was now a ghost in her own story. The brand had taken everything. And in its place stood a woman with no script, no stage, and no idea how to be just herself. The red carpet still remembered her heels. The camera flashes still chased her eyes. But something was missing. Something only she could feel. At the height of her fame, Yasmine Bleeth had everything the world told her to want. She starred in one of the most watched shows in the world. Her face was on billboards, her name in headlines, her body immortalized in posters across continents. She was the Baywatch bombshell, the brunette alternative in a sea of blondes, the embodiment of 90s seduction wrapped in neoprene and California sun. But with each year of stardom, the performance grew heavier. Behind the beach scenes and scripted flirtations was a woman who no longer knew if the lines she delivered belonged to her or to the character she'd become in real life. The parties blurred. The nights stretched long and hollow. The smiles came slower. The demands came faster. She tried to keep up. More makeup, more charm, more cocaine. And with each hit, she felt herself slipping, not just from reality, but from herself. In 2000, it all came crashing down. She was found unconscious in a hotel hallway, disoriented, alone. Traces of cocaine in her purse, a look of someone who had been sprinting toward the edge for years, and finally slipped. The arrest was humiliating. The mugshot, a far cry from the glamorous covers she once graced. And the tabloids were merciless. Baywatch beauty busted. From bikini to breakdown. Cocaine and collapse. Yasmine's fall. There was no compassion. No pause. Only consumption. She entered rehab. Again. But this time it wasn't a PR move. It was survival. She later told Glamour magazine, "Consciously trying to stay off drugs is now part of my life and always will be. It's hard. But I'm lucky to be alive." It was a rare moment of raw honesty, a glimpse into the real woman the world had ignored for so long. But the industry doesn't reward vulnerability. By the time she emerged clean, Hollywood had moved on. Casting calls never came. Producers hesitated. Paparazzi stalked her for glimpses, not of a comeback, but of relapse. She tried to live quietly, tried to embrace the ordinary. She began dating Paul Cerrito, a strip club owner she met in rehab. The match raised eyebrows, but Yasmine didn't care. For the first time, she was choosing something for herself. They married in 2002, no press. No cameras. Just a woman stepping out of the spotlight she never asked for. But even then, she couldn't escape judgment. The internet dissected every new photo. She gained weight. She looks tired. She's unrecognizable. They said she let herself go. But the truth was, she finally let herself be. Yasmine stopped pretending, stopped auditioning, stopped feeding the machine that once made her a star and then devoured her whole. She disappeared not in disgrace, but in defiance. Because sometimes, surviving is the boldest act of rebellion. She didn't vanish. She retreated. Not in shame, but in search of something the industry never offered her. Peace. Yasmine Bleeth walked away from Hollywood not with headlines, but with intention. She chose a quiet life. No publicist, no press, no staged comeback. And in that silence, she found something rare. Herself. She never published a memoir, never stood on talk shows reclaiming her fame. She simply lived, with all the scars, the shame, and the quiet victories of sobriety. Her story isn't one of glory, it's one of endurance, of what happens when a woman becomes a symbol and then decides she's had enough. There are no awards for that, no applause, just the steady work of healing in a world that once cheered for your collapse. Today, her name still circulates in internet searches. Whatever happened to Yasmine Bleeth? The answer is simple. She survived. And sometimes, that is the greatest legacy a woman can leave behind. In the end, she didn't fade into tragedy. She faded into freedom.